Could it be terrorism? I mean, you said yourself. Go ahead. What Al Qaeda said.
There were plans recovered from Al Qaeda that had a proposed plan. It's the cheapest way to wreak absolute havoc on our nation.
Could it be terrorism? I mean, you said yourself. Go ahead. What Al Qaeda said.
No, it absolutely could be. And, we recovered plans, not we, but the royal we, the, Special Operations and Intelligence, Community, Law Enforcement. I'm not sure who was the appropriating, agency, but there were plans recovered from Al Qaeda that had a proposed plan to attack America with wildfire. Because anyone who's been to the Western U.S., spent time out there, you go out there in those dry months, August, September, October, especially like now with the Santa Ana winds kicking. It's the cheapest way to wreak absolute havoc on our nation. The cheapest way. I mean, 9/11 was pretty damn cheap, but, they trained those guys for a few years. They had to hijack airliners, and it was a complex plan. Well executed. Hate those guys, but you got to respect that was a well executed plan. Terrible. Think about wildfires. Easiest thing ever. I mean, drive down the interstate with a Roman candle or, a Evian bottle of kerosene, light it and throw it out the window and keep driving. And the fuel is so explosive that, especially in winds like this, those fires will move fast. I mean, so last year, the Smokehouse Creek fire in Texas. We'll get back to LA in a second, but I think it's important for folks to realize everyone's talking about LA, as they should be. But there's so many other incidents in the past many, many years that illustrate why this is preventable and why we need to act now to fix it. The Smokehouse Creek fire in Texas last year was a disaster. The local response, as usual, is great. These local fire departments man up, they get out there, they fight hard, they protect their communities, but they do not have the resources. A local fire truck is not designed to fight a 1 million acre fire. It's designed to go fight a little 2-bedroom house fire in a neighborhood. These guys are outgunned, they're outmatched. That fire at peak spread, when it was being pushed by 80-mile-an-hour winds, was burning 2 football fields a second.
Wow.
I mean, visualize that.
Wow.
That's how fast it can spread. So this isn't the perception of people. They think about a fire, it's plodding along.
2 football fields a second?
It's plodding along, and it doesn't burn in a line. I fought a lot of fires from the air. Fought 2 fires myself on a ranch this summer. If you live out west, especially if you're an ag fighting wild, you better be always ready with your pick and your shovel and your Pulaski tool to go fight a fire, because the hay baler, the hay rake, the swather, you'll hit a rock when you're pulling hay, and it will start a fire. So 2 football fields a second is how fast that thing is moving, and it doesn't move in a line, especially when it's moving fast. The heat of the fire, like when people look at these pictures in California, they'll see trees intact and they see a house gone. And they look at those pictures like, how did that happen? How come the trees are standing but the house is gone? Well, a lot of this because the proximity heat of the fire will cause things to self-combust in front of the fire. So it's not even the line of the fire, it's just the heat that it's creating causes the flashpoint of material to just burst into flames. And then embers will get blown by the wind out in front of the fire line, and you'll have spotting. And spotting is where you see spot fire starting in front of it. And that's how sometimes the ash will blow miles in front of the fire and start spot fires that can be a whole new fire. And that's what we're seeing now in LA is a complex fire. That's what we call a complex fire, where it's not one simple fire. It's a whole area of fires like we're seeing in LA now. There's multiple fires around the valley that have been started. And now you've got a complex fire. You got a huge incident of multiple different fires that are all part of the same ecosystem, but they are different incidents. And that makes your response to that much harder.
So, I mean, do we, kind of back to thank you for that. That explains a lot on how these spread. And that's, 2 acres a second, that's moving. The terrorism. Do we know how this started?
Not yet. And obviously one thing about arson investigation is it is inherently challenging because the area has been burned. There's definitely been accusations that this is arson. I have not seen any, foolproof evidence that it was. But there absolutely has been arsonists all over the country that started these fires. And one thing that has been a big issue on the West Coast is a lot of the homeless drug population, where they're out there, they've got a stove, they're either cooking their food or meth or whatever in these homeless camps, and then fires kick off in there, and then boom, it's gone. But when you go back to the terrorist concept, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is now the most expensive natural disaster in American history. I mean, it's not even over yet, but it's on track to be the most expensive disaster in American history. Billions and billions of dollars. And think about this, Shawn. This is the scariest part about this fire. The deaths are terrible, the families and the homes destroyed. But this is the really scary underlayment of this issue. Insurance. Wildfire insurance could go away after this. I mean, it's been happening. These fires, we have more people living in wildfire-prone areas than we've ever had before in America. You know, Western U.S., whether it's resort communities in the mountains, whether it's L.A., I mean, people are building homes up into the hills, literally in the middle of fire country than never did before. And as a result, those homes have to be insured because normally to get a mortgage, you need to have homeowners insurance. Well, wildfire homeowners insurance has already been creaky these last few years. The foundations are starting to crumble after that Paradise fire, the Camp Fire in Paradise, California, Lahaina, so many fires across the Western U.S. Insurance companies are starting to get far more risk averse on whether we're going to underwrite a home in a wildfire risk area. This fire may eliminate it altogether. And if that happens, think how many people will lose homeowners insurance and will not be able to finance their home, or will lose their mortgage, or their homeowners insurance will go up so much they can't afford to live there. I mean, this could be a crisis in homeownership, which is, as you know, for the last 4 generations has been the main vehicle for American wealth creation. The vast majority of Americans' wealth is in their home. That's where we put our nest egg. That's where we generate long-term wealth. We make a salary, we have a 401k, but really most of us, our eggs are in our home. And we're betting on that's going to appreciate over our lifetime. And that will be the foundation of my net worth.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the same thing's kind of happening on the East Coast, especially in Florida.
Yes.
with hurricanes.
And they're interlinked because they all feed back to the same reinsurance pool. These aren't segregated pools for the most part. They're all coming back to the same reinsurance underwriters. So they're all exposed to the same risk. And we are approaching a crisis point where almost '08 style real estate crisis, because a third of America lives in wildfire prone areas. And a lot of Americans live in hurricane prone Southeast. But think about wildfires, far bigger impact than the Southeast hurricanes. And not to belittle it at all, but a lot more people live west of the Mississippi than live in that kind of Gulf corner.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know I got a lot of friends down in Florida. I moved up here from Florida. I mean, some of these, I think their insurance went up 40%.
Yes.
40%.
And that's not done going up. That's just a short trend line.
Some of them can't even get insured, depending
Yes.
on where the flood zones are. But
And if you already own a house, maybe you can keep your mortgage, but you almost can never get a new mortgage if you can't get insurance. They require it.
yeah,
So if you're trying to buy a home and you can't get in hurricane or fire coverage, you may not be able to buy a home.
yeah. So I mean, is it kind of moving into insurance? I wanted to go back. I mean, I do believe there is. We'll hit on the insurance in a minute, but I believe there is proof.
They caught that one guy with the blowtorch. He was biking off, going behind the house with a blowtorch. I have no doubt some of these, again, there's multiple fires, were definitely human started, no question.
Now,
I guess the point is, I don't know if they're coordinated. I don't know if there's some crazy meth head who's off his rocker who just feels like doing it, because that has happened several times, where just some jackass who's literally out of his mind, or if it's somebody who's malicious, or if it's a coordinated attack. Because Al-Qaeda did have a plan to basically cripple the American West Coast. They wanted to start fires basically from Southern California to Washington, all along the Pacific Coast Highway, essentially, and just create a firestorm in the Western U.S. to cripple us. And as we're seeing right now, it would have worked.
how would they? I mean, how would they even find out what caused this? Will they?
They will. I mean, I don't know for sure. It sounds like the emergency response stuff in LA hasn't been up to par. So I don't know, but I assume they will. And we'll probably find that some of it was genuine. Let's talk California policies. Mm-hmm. The Camp Fire in Paradise was caused by a PG&E gas line, Pacific Gas and Electric, a power line that shorted out, started the fire. I think some of these were intentional arson. Some of them may be utility lines. But, PG&E was blamed as a big evil American corporation. These guys didn't maintain their power lines, their corporate greed, and they got multi-billion-dollar judgment. They got taken to court, basically put out of business, and you owe all these people billions of dollars for your failures. Fair. You got to hold people accountable. I'm not afraid of accountability at all. But the reason PG&E's infrastructure and their power lines was so old and faulty, the reason they didn't pay to upgrade it was because the state of California had forced them to reinvest all of their income into solar power, wind power, and DEI, and wasn't allowing them to make the necessary upgrades to their traditional fossil fuel-oriented power infrastructure. And for years, management was saying, we need to upgrade these century-old transmission lines because they are a fire threat. We need to be able to cut trees down around the power lines so they don't start them on fire.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.